Terry, some people I know have felt that there is a tension between having seeker-friendly church services where guests, that's attractive to guests, and having meetings which are open to the activity of the Holy Spirit. A tension, if you want, between being charismatic and being missional. How do you see that?
Yeah, when I was a young guy, you did your service in the morning for the believers and your service in the evening, which was the gospel service. And so there was a genuine acknowledgement that there were like two things that you could do. You can build up the saints and gather, and you want to evangelize too. And certainly evangelism coming from the local church is a great thing. So that we want to see the local church as a place for evangelistic impact. Obviously, there are many ways of doing that. You can do it from a church service. You can do it on the streets. You can do it through Alpha. You can be evangelistic in all kinds of ways. But I think for the local church to be evangelistic when it gathers is fine. It's a great thing to do. I think the concern I sometimes have is that if the whole raison d'etre of the church is focused on the outsider, so that we gather in order to evangelize, that's our main reason for being there, the danger of the church missing a whole part of who she really is, the living people of God, the temple of the Holy Spirit, the place where God himself meets with his people. If we so adjust so that the meeting is essentially an evangelistic occasion, then I think we're going to rob the church of who she is fundamentally, that we're there to be the people of God, helped by God, meeting with God, glorifying God together. So I think these things need to be looked at very carefully. I think, we want to remain evangelistic, an evangelistic people. If we say, right, our one gathering in the week when we all gather is going to be essentially an evangelistic meeting, and that's all we have to say about it, then we are robbing the church of all sorts of other purposes of coming together. So I think we need to look at it. So I personally feel that when the church gathers, it's a phenomenal occasion. It is the gathering of the saints in the presence of God, that we come to meet with God, we come to glorify God, we come to worship God, we come to encounter God. That is of huge importance. I think if we are so evangelistic that we lose that sense of occasion, that sense of coming up to meet with God, to increase our fascination with God, the saints will get shallower in their expectation of what is the church, what do I expect? They will feel we're here to reach the lost. That's what we're here for, and the lost will be added to this shallow, we're now saved, okay, we're saved. Let's get some more saved. What about our being here in a sense of wonder? What about our sense of, hey, we're the family of God. We're a unique people. We're a special possession, a royal priesthood. We are all that the New Testament talks about, this glorious people of God. If we so arrange our church life that becomes very secondary, we're here for the lost, then I think the church will lose out very seriously. So I think we can combine the both. We can. So if one of the ways we say, well, we're so aware of the outsider, we don't want to spend a lot of time worshiping God because the outsider finds that strange. I would just say, well, that is a very serious choice you're making, because you are robbing the church of her actual identity. We are a holy people, a royal priesthood. And so once we remove from being the temple of God, that we gather for the outsider. Now sometimes that's happening in little trivial ways. So I was recently speaking, I was in a church, and the opening remarks directly we gathered were so geared to the outsider, which was respectful of the outsider, fine, but it was so much that way that the fact that the people of God had gathered was pretty secondary. because all the words were about, I hope you like this and this and this, with lots of details for the outsider. And that, no, let's start then. It was kind of, hey, we've come to meet God here. And that was kind of almost forgotten, this incredible privilege. We are in the presence of God. We've come to meet God. So I think my concern is that if we miss the point and the church lives in its only meeting together, is a meeting where, no, it's for the outsider. We've lost something profound. And that can happen because there's a kind of philosophy, that's what we're for, then the details make it look that way. Yeah. Now, I honestly feel that the lost are provoked by a people who worship. Mm-hmm. These people seem to know God. This isn't just a formal thing. And hey, these people, they seem to know him. And sometimes in the meeting, it's not just the professional guy at the front. This person sat next to me, they prayed. And hey, they're with me. I mean, how come they prayed? I thought these professionals did that. What, do you know God like he does? And so I think that there is evangelistic implications when a church gathers to meet God. It's not that we've lost evangelistic impact, that people looking in find, hey, these people know God, they're with God, they're enjoying God. Yeah. I once heard Matt Chandler say, some people say cut down your worship for the sake of the outsider. He said, I totally disagree. And he said, I want the outsider to know I'm enthusiastic. He said, if I introduce my wife to someone, I want them to know I'm enthusiastic about my wife. That was his illustration. Mm-hmm. He said, I want people to know I'm enthusiastic about God. Mm-hmm. So to me, if you're saying, no, we're not to be too enthusiastic. Mm-hmm. And so I was in another church and they said, no, this is a very cool area. So we keep it all very cool. And literally that was the language they used. And the band played and we listened to them. And people's hands in their pockets, no one's worshipping, because the outsiders, they're cool. They don't want to be. Now, I totally disagree with that. Yeah. And I think we're there for God. And I think the sense of being on a mission, I don't want to lose, but the sense of being the people of God who gather to increase their fascination with God, their sense of occasion. They come from a rough world. They come from where they're getting beaten up, disappointed, tragedies, heartbreaks. They want to come and meet God. Yeah. And if that gets lost, we're in serious trouble. So I think, for me, the sense of coming to meet with God is paramount. Mm-hmm. Evangelistic, I would say, for us in the UK, the fastest growing churches even, but the one that's the biggest in England, terrific worship, but people are being added all the time. Yeah. And so I think I want to see worship central. I think sometimes that is only talked about in terms of what are called contributions, a word we've invented lately in terms of church life. And so the discussions around contributions, which to me is slightly secondary. I would rather come at it the way I've just come at it. Right. So into that context, what do I mean contributions? Well, what's usually meant is people using the gifts of the Holy Spirit as listed in the Bible. Now, I think that sometimes pastors and church leaders are in reality rather embarrassed by the contributions because they are often not exactly stunning. And we've allowed that to happen. Over a period of time, we've got used to that. Yeah. And we've let it happen. And we've not been diligent to say, that wasn't really very edifying, thank you, for the X hundred people here. Yeah. So we've not been diligent there. And we've let stuff happen. And then we say, the outsider doesn't like it. What we mean is we don't like it, and we're embarrassed, and we don't want the outsider hearing it as well, because they'll think you're clowns. Yeah. So I honestly think that's where it's at. I think a definite gift of the Spirit, a prophetic utterance, the outsider is amazed, I mean, profoundly, what is that? How did you know?
Yeah.
That is supernatural. The outsider is fascinated by the supernatural. And people say, no, the gifts of the Spirit will put off the outsider. Rubbish.
Yeah.
The gifts of the Spirit fascinate the outsider. You can get healed in this. I can get healed? Well, I need healing. Well, God's here. He heals the sick. It's supernatural. It's the gifts of the Spirit. Or God knows this is your situation. How did you know that about me? That's the gifts of the Spirit. We want the gifts of the Spirit. The outsider loves the possibility of the supernatural. They are not put off by the supernatural. We are ourselves embarrassed by things we do that are not very impressive, and we feel outsider won't like that. Of course they won't. So I think people often discuss this, but they're not actually seeing the issues. They're discussing it from a different angle. So I would say let's talk from genuine principle. I think the other thing which overlaps this is that as churches grow larger, the place for the gifts of the Spirit is a very questionable thing. I mean, it's a little bit like the breaking of bread. Jesus introduced the breaking of bread at a meal. And so now we have 500 people, 600, 700. We're going to have breaking of bread. What does that mean? Well, you know, it's just nothing like how Jesus introduced it. And I think that probably in the early church, the meetings were probably of a certain size where gifts of the Spirit could happen very freely. I think when we get churches growing to X hundreds, and the number of people who can participate audibly, publicly, percentage-wise, has got smaller and smaller anyway. So it is an arguable thing. Maybe the Sunday meetings are not the best place for the gifts to be cultivated. It would be better if they were cultivated back into church life, into the smaller groups that we all have. That might be a better setting where gifts can multiply. Now, for myself, I think that's true, but I would feel that on a Sunday meeting, that the possibility of the supernatural being present is, I think, of high importance. I think that's what God poured out the Holy Spirit upon us and was restoring New Testament church life. So I think we've got to look at it from several different angles. And I think this discussion is sometimes just down this, do we have contributions or not on a Sunday? And I don't think we're looking properly at the whole subject. So those would be some of my preliminary observations.
And I think that's very helpful observations and very valid. I mean, I know from my own experience, coming from a total unchurched background, knowing nothing about church and coming into a church where, I mean, I saw people enjoying something, singing about something, enthusiastic about something. It was dynamic. I wanted to know what that something was. And there were gifts of the Spirit being exercised. There were prophetic words where you just felt there's something, as you say, supernatural about this. I had no clue what was going on. I didn't understand it all. It was, in a way, it was something of a mystery in some respects, but it was that kept drawing me back because I knew there was something real there.
Absolutely.
There was something that I couldn't really account for, and that was what kept drawing me in. So I totally agree. I think really there should be no tension between charismatic, missional. I think, as Paul says to the Corinthians, you know, when someone's prophesying, you know, the unbeliever among you will fall down saying God is in the place, and certainly that would be our desire, I think, for our churches.
I think too that Jesus said before you begin to reach out, wait for the Holy Spirit. You need the Holy Spirit to be effective. And if we're saying, actually, we want to be effective, so let's not have the Holy Spirit, it's lunatic.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.